Monday morning. Matt Ferentz. We're going to talk about some stuff this morning. Yeah, we're getting closer to the election. It's the 28th of September. And here we are. We talk about mail-in voting here today. Let me say hello to you this morning. I'm Matt Ferentz, candidate for the Pennsylvania House of Representatives in District 6. Thanks for joining me either here live on Monday morning with Matt on the 28th of September, or a little bit later if you're catching this archived here on the Facebook channel or also on the YouTube channel, Matt Ferentz for State Rep. If you haven't checked that out, you can check that out soon. So normally I would give you a quick update on some of the things that you might want to think about as we're heading toward the election relative to voting, but that's actually what I want to talk about today is mail-in voting, both how to do it. One of the issues that we all need to be really careful of if we're doing mail-in voting, and also some of the shenanigans that are happening, I think that we're all aware of, nationally in particular, but some of it is definitely happening right here in District 6 as well. So the first thing, it's a little bit of show and tell today. This is kind of an awesome pencil. I don't know, I haven't been giving you guys pencil tours on these Monday mornings, but maybe I should. My wife got me this pencil just recently, and if you can, if I rotate it, you can see that hole in it back in the little black. It's just painted. There's actually not a ferrule on there. But this is an official voting pencil, which is pretty cool, a ballot pencil. So I thought that's appropriate for today. You can see it's a little bit fatter than the regular pencil, but it's a good one. So we're talking about mail-in voting today. So of course we need the mailbox, and there's no shortage of coverage of the fact that mail-in voting is a thing this year. But there's also no denying that it's going to be a complicated thing in some way. I'm thrilled that we have universal, well, not universal, that's part of it. We can't call it, it's not universal mail-in ballot, but no excuse absentee, which is for mail-in. We need to draw our little eagle on here. We'll just put something that sort of looks like it, and it'll say mail. That anybody in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania can submit a request for a mail-in ballot, get it, and can vote by mail. So there's a couple of course, the dates and information you need. One is votespa.com. That's a one-stop shop for the Commonwealth for all the things that you might need to do. And a couple of dates if you aren't registered yet, or if you know somebody who's not registered, talk to people, make sure they're registered to vote. The registration deadline is approaching, but we still have about 3 weeks. The 19th of October is the deadline to register for voting. And the deadline, and this is where it's going to start to get a little bit hairy, the deadline to request a mail-in ballot is not until October 27th. This has been a point of contention in the Commonwealth. That is about a week, right? It is a week before the election, which is on November 3rd. And so then the other big part is that ballot return requirement. And as it stands right now, they must be postmarked, so put in the mail and actually get the postmark from the post office on election day, November 3rd. There was recent litigation that went to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that they had to accept ballots that were mailed by election day and were postmarked, and they have like up to a week to arrive. The contention there is that the GOP majority, and it's a certain kind of GOP. I always hate calling them just the GOP majority because I have no beef with Republicans in general, but the sort that have been in power are doing all sorts of things to work on one of the other themes we're going to talk about a little bit today, which is voter suppression, and ways to lower the number of people who successfully vote. And so they're making a big beef, and Brad Roy himself is doing this too, to say that it's ridiculous that it's a postmark deadline and they should require, as the law was originally written, that they arrive by November 3rd. So they actually have to be in hand by 8 p.m. November 3rd under the previous interpretation. And the point there is, I think, as we all know, there are issues with the speed of the mail. Not so much around here. Mail's been doing pretty well. But in other places, you could mail in a week ahead of time and it would still come in late. And that's really no fault of the voter. And so the postmark deadline is really, I think, a good faith effort to make sure that people who have sought to vote on time have voted in time. But they're trying to block it. And we'll talk about voter suppression and why in a minute. The other thing that you may not know about, so the other thing, ballot return postmark, you can also drop it at voter services. And I wanted to draw you a quick little map of that. Might slide the coffee out of the way for this. If you go to the Crawford County Courthouse, if you go in the main door here, so this is Diamond Park on this side, you'll have to go through the security here, and then you go to the main hallway, turn left, and then right here down at the end of the block, so to speak, is the voter services office. And you can drop off your ballot right there in person at any point after you receive it. Ballots are going out this week, so if you have requested a mail-in ballot, you should receive it pretty soon. There are provisions currently to allow for drop boxes. There will be no drop boxes in Crawford County. So you're going to have to go into the county courthouse. I should write that in case someone's just seeing the picture of the county courthouse to the voter services office. If you're in Erie County, there'll be a drop box. Other counties may or may not, but it's permitted by law. Crawford County has elected not to have a drop box, unless that changes for some reason. Now, there's another option that a lot of people don't know about, and that's actually in-person early voting. Believe it or not, that's actually, and it's been an undersold or under discussed possibility, in-person early voting. And the in-person is the same as dropping off your ballot at voter services. What you do is you go to voter services and you can register, request your mail-in, fill it out, and return it all in one stop. So if you, or if you just haven't requested the mail-in, you can go to voter service, request the mail-in, and fill it out and vote in person there. Then you know it's been done and delivered. The other thing that we should throw out there is if you're going to vote in person, and I'm hearing more and more people are thinking of changing their plans and voting in person. Even if you've requested a mail-in ballot, you can still vote in person. You just have to take, and this is important, if you vote in person, you need to take your mail-in ballot with you to the polls and surrender it to the poll workers who will destroy it and invalidate it, and then you'll be able to vote by machine in person on November 3rd. So even if you've requested your mail-in, that does not prevent you from the opportunity to vote in person. So I would encourage everybody to go ahead and request those mail-ins if you haven't. Now, here's the big issue. Well, I've made a little bit of a, like I said, it's prop day. Here's a ballot. And I just wanted to talk through some of what we have to do here to make sure that ballots are counted. Because again, this is part of all this voter suppression. There's a whole bunch of rules that have been, in some ways the rules are fine, but the way they're probably going to be challenged, there is a risk of lots of ballots being thrown out. So the first thing is, of course, you have to not do that. You need to fill in, these will be ovals instead of squares, but fill in these squares completely to choose the people that you're voting for. And this is just, a hypothetical 3 people that you might vote for in the election. But this is the next important part. This is the security envelope. There's a thing called, they're calling it the naked ballot. And a naked ballot will not count in this election. So there are 2 envelopes you'll receive with the mail-in. If you did it in the primary, you know it. One of them is the one that's addressed back to your voter services, and it is the the outer envelope that will have a signature spot on it. There's an inner envelope, a security envelope, that actually doesn't have identifying marks. It's absolutely crucial that after you do your vote, hey, that's a nice logo. I like that. After you vote, you seal up, a little glue here. You seal up the security envelope. It needs to be sealed to be valid, and your ballot needs to be in that security envelope that then needs to go into, I'm going to have to, my security envelope's a little bit too big. These will fit like a glove when you get them. Then it goes into the outer envelope that you then also have to seal, and then you have to sign on the outside, your signature. Sealing, so inner envelope, security envelope sealed, outer envelope sealed, and the signature on the outside is crucial for the vote to count. In the primary, there were some instances where these naked ballots arrived. I don't know why I put two T's on ballot. We'll make it lots of T's. So it's intentional. Ballot. It's like an echo. When some ballots came in the primary that did not weren't enclosed in the security ballot, and they voted them anyway. And the interesting / a little suspicious thing is that there were some right-wing operatives who were observing that but said nothing, didn't challenge it. They were just trying to gather the information so that they could use it in the fall election to try to get as many ballots tossed out as possible. That's an issue. So here's the other issue that we need to be thinking about. When you request that mail-in ballot, I encourage you to fill it in as soon as you can and return it as soon as you can. I think likely I'll take it to voter services. I do trust the mail. I trust the mail as a family enterprise. This is actually my grandfather's postal shield. He was a letter carrier in the Chicago area, so that says Chicago. So I love mail. Mail is part of the family history. I'm going to leave that in view. It's mail and voting. Let's put the postal shield. And I know our postal workers are working hard to do this, but I'll feel a little bit more comfortable taking it in person there. But as you may have heard, there are massive volumes of these mail-in ballots that will be coming in this year. And that's going to create a bit of an issue for the count. So the count for mail-ins cannot begin until the morning of November 3rd. So in some areas, there will be massive quantities. And here in Crawford County, there will be large volumes of mail-in ballots and also hardworking county commissioners, but they're not a lot of people. They do a great job of administering the elections at a low cost by doing it, but it's just them doing the count. They can't begin that count until November 3rd. So that's an issue. Now, remember this ballot that we had, right, with all of the sealing. Each of these ballots needs to be opened up. The envelopes need to be opened up and the ballots taken out and flattened to prepare for vote scanning. And so that's a part of the process called the pre-canvass. Currently, they're allowed to start, well, actually, I think this is still, they might be allowed to start 3 days before November 3rd. This is still being bandied about and argued, and will probably wind up in the courts again. The governor had requested 15 days, and that would give 2 weeks for boards of elections to not count the ballots, but prepare them so they could get them going through the scanning machines rapidly. But the GOP said, no, this is voter suppression right here. The GOP said no to that, countered with the 3 days, which would also have outlawed the use of drop boxes. So that's why it's all a little bit in flux. But right now, the most likely outcome seems we'll probably be able to start pre-canvassing 3 days before. We ask ourselves, or should be asking ourselves, why would we do this? Why limit it to that extent? There is a fascinating, terrifying, but I encourage you to read it if you haven't yet, article by Barton Gellman in The Atlantic and it's online too. And it is called The Election That Could Break America. And he's positing several different scenarios that one has to be concerned about when we look at this. And essentially, we begin with one that's called the blue shift. Is that what we've seen in elections for a long time, and this was definitely true in the primary, is that a much higher percentage of Democrats are voting by mail in ballot than Republicans. So on election night, you may see elections tilting to the right, which would be this way. And then as the mail-in ballots are counted, they will shift blue. That's the blue shift because the higher percentage of Democrats are voting by mail. The concern here is if we were able to pre-canvass and actually process as many of these mail-in ballots as possible on election night, you would avoid the blue shift. And the blue shift can create the appearance of something that isn't quite right. And that connects with the sort of ridiculous statements that our president has been making about mail in ballot and fraud. So that's one issue. The other is the length of time that it takes to count. A long count makes us uneasy as a country and also gives us an opportunity for someone with autocratic tendencies to say we need to just stop. It's gone on too long. And as Gelman talks about in the article, there are a couple of dates when everything has to end. And so the longer the count goes on, the greater the opportunity to actually again suppress some of the vote. And it's going to be primarily, if you attack mail-in voting, primarily you're attacking Democrats who are voting. That's undemocratic, anti-democratic, both in a large D and small d way. And we need to think about that. I have to mention that if you pay attention, as everybody needs to my opponent, Brad Roy, he has been railing against mail-in voting exactly in that national right-wing line of calling into question its validity in different ways. He has called into question the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania allowing for this 3-day, or particularly allowing for this postmark deadline. I cannot understand anyone who believes in democracy and believes in the power of voting who wouldn't want to give voters every opportunity and chance that is reasonable to have their vote heard, unless you're trying to suppress certain voters for an outcome. Now, I actually don't think that that has anything to do with the race so much in Crawford County, but the fact that the GOP has been hijacked by Trump. And they're doing so many things at every level of government in order to try to get the party to protect his autocratic tendencies, to undermine voter will in order to secure an election. It's quite troubling, as I'm sure it's troubling you too, but we need to pay attention to politicians who are doing that because they're not working for you and they're not working for democracy if they don't want you to be able to vote. The phrase we've heard from lots of different right wingers, including Brad Roy, and I think they're reading the same manual. They talk about the primaries have been a trial run for November in an attempt to use mail-in voting to steal the election in Pennsylvania. The fact of the matter is, Pennsylvania, our great state here, the Commonwealth, is a swing state this year. It may be, a lot of the coverage is saying the presidency may be determined in Pennsylvania. And so we need to be out there voting in overwhelming numbers. So make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you've requested a mail-in. If everything looks hunky-dory on November 3rd, maybe still vote in person, though still I would recommend that you get those mail-ins sooner. And pay attention to all the different ways that people are speaking out against mail-in voting. And if you hear somebody you know saying mail-in voting is fraudulent, tell them they're wrong because there's absolutely no evidence to show that has ever been the case. So that's it. That's Monday morning, the 28th. We're about 5 weeks away from the election. We're in the zone. Help me out every way you can if you're so interested. And by that, mostly, I mean, tell people that I'm out there, tell people what I'm about. Please share things like this through social media. The more people hear about this campaign, the more confident I am that people will look at the issues. And when they look at the issues, I think we have a pretty good chance in November. I hope you have a pretty good Monday. I hope you have a pretty good week. Actually, I hope you have a terrific Monday and a terrific week. I will see you on the interwebs throughout time. All right, take it easy.